I caught my future mother-in-law, Maggie, laughing with her friends one afternoon. They were joking about how she had secured a simp son-in-law and that she was all set for life. Hearing this made me realize that she would not be able to rely on me financially, despite the way she seemed to think of me. I am 32 years old and am getting married to my wonderful fiancée, Deborah, who is 31. We have been together for 2 years, and just last month, I proposed to her. I am truly head over heels for her and am excited about spending the rest of my life with this amazing woman. Deborah and I come from very different backgrounds. I grew up in a working-class family where money was often tight. I am the middle child in a family of 3 siblings, and we always had to work hard to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. On the other hand, Deborah had a much more comfortable upbringing. Her father was a successful businessman who was able to provide everything she wanted, allowing her to grow up surrounded by wealth and luxury. She often attended extravagant parties and events that were far removed from my own experiences. I put in a lot of effort to work my way through college, and eventually, I landed a job at a prestigious company. My parents were very proud of my accomplishments, especially because I managed to build my life without relying on their financial help. When Deborah and I first met, it was at a friend's party. Even though we came from such different worlds, we felt an instant connection. We started dating and took the time to really understand each other, and with each date, our feelings grew deeper. As our relationship became more serious, Deborah invited me to one of her family dinners to formally introduce me to her parents. This was my first time meeting her dad, John, who had that successful business background, and Maggie, who had always been a dedicated stay-at-home mom. John seemed to appreciate the hard work I had put into my life, but Maggie's attitude was different. She clearly did not approve of me and seemed to look down on my upbringing. It was obvious that I did not meet her expectations for the kind of son-in-law she envisioned for her only daughter. Maggie's disapproval was hard to miss. She often interrupted me during conversations, and her disdainful glances spoke volumes about her feelings toward me. This created a challenging situation that was not easy to navigate. In contrast, my own parents were very welcoming to Deborah. They embraced her wholeheartedly, and my brothers quickly took a liking to her, teasing her playfully about how she still had time to run away from me. It was heartwarming to see my family so supportive of our relationship, especially when facing the ongoing tension with Maggie. Despite the challenges with Maggie, I made every effort to bridge the gap between us, hoping that over time, I could win her over. I understood that our different backgrounds and expectations would take time for her to reconcile. However, the tension persisted, and I could feel her disapproval lurking in the background. Nevertheless, Deborah and I focused on building our own life together, filled with love, understanding, and shared dreams. We remained committed to nurturing our relationship, despite these familial challenges, holding on to the hope that Maggie might eventually come to accept me. Sadly, about a year ago, John passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. While he left behind a significant amount of wealth, there were also many debts that needed to be addressed. This led Maggie to make the difficult decision to sell her house and their car to cover these financial obligations when creditors came calling. As a result, she had nowhere else to go and moved in with us. She has been living here for the last 6 months. I didn't really mind having her stay with us, understanding that she was experiencing a tough time after losing her husband. I tried my best to make her stay comfortable, but it seemed like she constantly found reasons to complain about things around the house. To give some context, Deborah and I have always shared our responsibilities in our home, but the dynamic with Maggie has added a layer of complexity that has been challenging for all of us. From the moment my partner and I began living together, we established a clear understanding of sharing household responsibilities. We've always believed that sharing chores is essential, especially given our busy careers. Cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry have become ingrained in our daily routine, as it allows us to maintain balance in our hectic lives while supporting each other in every way possible. My parents instilled in me a sense of independence from a young age, which is why I find fulfillment in contributing equally to our home. However, my mother-in-law, Maggie, has a very different perspective on these matters. She has consistently shown her disdain for me taking part in household tasks, making her feelings known through various subtle comments suggesting that it is inappropriate for a man to be in the kitchen or to engage in domestic duties. I typically brush these remarks off and try to ignore them, but as time has passed, Maggie's comments have shifted from being mildly irritating to increasingly hurtful and insensitive. After discussing this situation with my fiancée, Deborah, it became clear that Maggie's behavior has been difficult to manage and has taken on a hostile tone. Recently, I was promoted at work, and this achievement inspired me to celebrate this milestone in a significant way with our family and friends. To mark the occasion, we decided to host a grand event, inviting our closest loved ones. Deborah also thought it would be a good idea to extend invitations to some of Maggie's wealthy friends, many of whom she hadn't seen in a while following the passing of her husband. I prefer to maintain humility and not show off, so I entrusted Deborah with the responsibility of planning the celebration, and she went all out to ensure that everything was perfect. On the day of the event, our home looked stunning, and as guests began to arrive, it was heartwarming to see Maggie reconnecting with her old friends. Meanwhile, Deborah and I were occupied hosting our own circle of friends and family. As the party progressed and the atmosphere became lively, I noticed a change in Maggie's behavior. She had imbibed a few too many drinks, and her comments became increasingly inappropriate. She began boasting about how expensive our home decor and the food were, clearly seeking attention from her friends. This behavior quickly became uncomfortable, and I could see some guests reacting with surprise to her comments. Deborah and I exchanged anxious glances, unsure of how to address the growing situation. We tried to remain calm as we recognized that Maggie's excessive drinking was contributing to her outbursts. At one point, when we ran out of wine, I quickly went to a nearby liquor store. Upon returning, I found Deborah outside on the lawn, enjoying the company of our relatives. After serving drinks, I headed back inside to check on the other guests. It was then that I overheard Maggie laughing loudly with her friends. As I was about to enter the room, I caught part of her conversation where she was discussing my recent promotion. She went on to tell her friends how she had been living in our home rent-free for months, implying that I was somehow naive for allowing this to continue. She laughed as she referred to me as a simp son-in-law, suggesting that I was footing her bills while she stayed in our house without contributing. Her words felt like a punch to the gut, and I was taken aback by the lack of respect she was showing. Her friends laughed along, and it was painful to hear those derisive comments from someone I had welcomed into my home and tried to support during a difficult time in her life. As I stood in the hallway, battling a mix of anger, disappointment, and betrayal, I struggled with whether to confront her immediately or wait for a better time to address what I had just heard. Maggie continued to speak with her friends, making a comment about how, since I came from a low-income background, I would always have to work hard and that she had nothing to worry about regarding her financial future because of my hard work. At that point, I could no longer remain silent. The hurtful nature of her comments had crossed a line, and I made the decision to walk into the room and confront her. I could no longer tolerate the way she was speaking, filled with mockery and insincerity. It was time for me to take a stand. I made a firm decision to step into the room and confront her immediately. I wanted to express clearly that I would no longer allow her to take advantage of my kindness. With a wine bottle in hand, I walked into the room, and an immediate stillness fell over the crowd. Laughter faded away as everyone turned to look at me, their expressions shifting from casual enjoyment to an awkward silence filled with uncertainty. Maggie's laughter abruptly stopped, and I could see her face transform from surprise to a mix of discomfort and unease. She must have realized I heard snippets of her conversation and was concerned about what I had overheard. As I placed the wine bottle down and gathered my thoughts, I focused on Maggie. "Maggie," I began, my voice steady, "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with your friends just now." I stood there for a few moments, allowing the tension in the air to build as I continued. "For the past 5 minutes, I listened as you spoke about how you have used my perceived naivety to your advantage." I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she had done. "I welcomed you into my home with open arms and have tried to support you during a difficult time, especially after the loss of your husband. However, making hurtful remarks about me in front of our family and friends, and laughing at my expense, is completely unacceptable." The atmosphere in the room remained thick with tension, making it hard to breathe. Everyone could sense the weight of my words, and I noticed that Maggie looked visibly shaken by my directness. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Just as the tension felt as if it might snap, my fiancée, Deborah, walked into the room, confusion written across her face as she tried to grasp the situation unfolding before her. In that moment, I explained to Deborah what her mother had just been saying about me. I could see the shock register on Deborah's face as she struggled to comprehend the situation's seriousness. Maggie's expression, too, morphed from shock to embarrassment. I felt a wave of determination wash over me. I knew I could not forgive Maggie for her disrespectful behavior. "I think it's best if you leave my house right now," I said firmly. Maggie's eyes widened in disbelief, and she began to protest frantically, fully aware that she had nowhere else to go at that moment. Deborah remained silent, understanding the humiliation I was feeling due to her mother's words. I stood my ground, reiterating my point that I could no longer trust my soon-to-be mother-in-law living under my roof. I suggested that she find a place to stay with one of her wealthy friends who had just been at the party, those same friends who had been laughing at my expense only minutes ago. As Maggie glanced around the room, her friends deliberately avoided making eye contact with her, leaving her in a vulnerable position. I felt a sense of satisfaction. I had reached my breaking point and was no longer willing to be manipulated or demeaned. In that charged moment, Deborah finally found her voice. She addressed her mother, clearly disappointed yet determined. "Mom, you've put us in an incredibly uncomfortable situation with your behavior today. We've always tried to support you, but this treatment toward my fiancé is unacceptable." Caught between her daughter's disappointment and the reality of her own behavior, Maggie was beginning to understand how serious things had become. With no easy way out, she attempted to apologize, but I refused to let her off the hook any longer. Still simmering with anger and disappointment, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving the tension behind me. As the party came to an end, Maggie quietly departed to stay with one of her relatives, leaving a sour note lingering in the air. In the days following the incident, my phone has been buzzing with a mix of reactions. Most of the guests have supported my decision to stand up for myself, but some of my fiancé's family members have voiced their disapproval, telling Deborah that my public confrontation of her mother was wrong and that I should not have humiliated her like that. My parents, who attended the party, stood firmly behind me, offering their full support. This situation has created a rift between our families, and the mixed opinions are only adding to the existing tension. Now, I feel compelled to seek an unbiased perspective on this matter. Am I in the wrong for confronting my future mother-in-law in front of everyone after catching her making fun of me? I observed her making fun of me, and I felt the need to confront her about it. I wanted to make it clear that she wouldn't be able to rely on me anymore. First, I want to express my appreciation for everyone's feedback on my last post. Many people pointed out that this situation should make me think about the family I am planning to marry into. I have received numerous suggestions about getting a prenuptial agreement with my fiancé before we tie the knot. Honestly, this was something I had never considered until now, but given the recent events, I am seriously giving it a second thought. After the party ended, my fiancé and I engaged in a long conversation about everything that had happened. Although she fully supports me, I can't shake off the feeling that my trust has been compromised. While I understand that this situation isn't her fault, I can't help but worry about her family and how easily they might try to manipulate me in the future. Several comments have pointed out that my mother-in-law's subtle yet mean comments have been a form of emotional abuse, and I am starting to realize that they might be right. I have come to the point where I do not want her in my life anymore. 2 days after Maggie left, she reached out to my fiancé, but Deborah chose not to answer. Instead, she sent me a furious text that read, "Adam, are you happy now that you've separated me from my daughter? I've already lost my husband, and now I'm losing my daughter because of you. Yes, I used you, but isn't that what a son-in-law is supposed to do? Pay for his future mother-in-law's expenses? You could have bought me a new place when I lost my house, but instead, you forced me to live with you. You have more than enough to take care of my daughter, so it wouldn't hurt you to take care of me too." Her message filled me with anger, and it was clear she felt no regret for her hurtful comments that she had made in front of her friends. I decided to share this message with Deborah, who quickly assured me she would handle the situation and advised me to block her mother's number. What happens next is uncertain, but I feel emotionally drained from dealing with this ongoing drama. The continuous unkindness from her mother, coupled with her unrealistic financial expectations, is weighing heavily on me. In the days that followed, Deborah took charge of managing her mother's attempts to reach out. She firmly told her mother that the situation had become unbearable and that she had crossed a line. Deborah even offered to help her mother find suitable living arrangements but made it clear that our current living situation was no longer acceptable. Maggie's responses varied from anger to desperation, as she repeatedly accused me of tearing her family apart and causing her more pain during a tough time. I had blocked her, so thankfully, she had no way to contact me. With our wedding drawing near, I shared my concerns and anxieties with Deborah. To my surprise, she took my feelings very well. She agreed that my concerns were valid and expressed her willingness to sign a prenuptial agreement to ease my worries and discomfort. I was taken aback by how understanding she was, and I began to feel guilty for harboring negative thoughts about her just because of her mother's actions. After that heartfelt discussion, I felt a sense of relief returning to our relationship, and we were starting to regain some normalcy. However, just a few days later, Maggie unexpectedly showed up at our front door, catching me completely off guard. I was at home alone when I heard the doorbell ring. When I opened the door, there she was, ready to confront me. The moment she stepped inside, her accusations and anger poured out. She claimed that I had ruined her relationship with her daughter forever, laying all the blame on me. Her words were filled with frustration and resentment. "You think you can just control everything, don't you?" she shouted. "You've taken my daughter away from me, and now you're trying to push me out of her life. This is my family too, and you can't dictate what happens here." As the argument escalated, tensions ran high, making it clear that this conflict was far from over. The tension in the room was palpable as the argument escalated. Maggie could not help but make her accusations more personal, stating that I was intentionally isolating her from her daughter Deborah. She claimed that she had every right to be living with her. As her words hit me, I focused on taking a deep breath, striving to keep my emotions in check even as the situation spiraled. I explained to her, "Maggie, this isn't about pushing you away. It's about preserving the peace and well-being of our family. Your actions and words have made it difficult for us to maintain a healthy environment in our home." I continued to emphasize that my intention was not to isolate her, but to set necessary boundaries that would allow Deborah and me to have the loving, supportive, and peaceful home we both deserved. This isn't about control, it's about ensuring that our relationship is respected and protected. In that moment, I felt a sense of relief when Deborah returned from grocery shopping. She must have sensed the tension immediately, her eyes widened in shock upon seeing her mother standing in the house. Rushing to my side, she asked if I was okay, her concern clearly visible on her face. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders just having her there beside me. However, Maggie wasted no time redirecting her frustration toward Deborah. She accused me of trying to control her life, angrily proclaiming that I couldn't kick her out of the house and that she intended to stay there as long as her daughter was around. Maggie insisted that I was attempting to tear the family apart ever since her husband had passed away. Deborah, visibly upset, defended me by pointing out that her mother could not expect me to overlook her hurtful remarks. Deborah reminded Maggie of the harsh words she had directed at me during a party I hosted, and she highlighted the fact that Maggie had never offered an apology. Deborah stood firm in asserting that her mother had no right to assume she could live in our home simply because she was marrying me. This defense only escalated the tension in the room, clearly displeasing Maggie, whose anger intensified as she saw her daughter support me. As the atmosphere grew heavy with conflicting emotions, I feared the conflict could further worsen. Therefore, I felt compelled to ask Maggie to leave the house immediately, warning her that if she refused, I would have no choice but to call the police. Maggie's expression was a mix of frustration and resignation, revealing her desire to continue arguing. Nevertheless, she ultimately chose to leave, bringing an end to that charged moment. Following this incident, I realized I needed to take some time away from Deborah and her family. Although my love for her was strong, I recognized that I could not remain in a toxic environment indefinitely. I felt it was essential for me to step back and reflect on our future together. 4 months have passed since that difficult experience, and I recognize that it has been quite a while since my last update. Yet, I am excited to share that Deborah and I are now happily married. Our wedding day was seamless and turned out to be a beautiful celebration of our love and commitment to each other. Surrounded by our closest family and friends, our special day was filled with joy and lasting memories. While I had previously expressed uncertainty about marrying her, the time apart made me realize that Deborah was fundamentally different from her mother. Before we exchanged vows, Deborah and I entered into a prenuptial agreement, which provided both of us with peace of mind. This decision was crucial in ensuring that our relationship was built on trust, respect, and a clear understanding of our responsibilities to one another. One notable absence on our wedding day was Maggie. We extended an invitation to her, wanting to ensure that she could be part of this significant milestone in Deborah's life. However, Maggie chose not to attend, her lingering anger and resentment from our earlier conflicts preventing her from being present. It saddened me to see Deborah grappling with the absence of her mother on such an important occasion. Nevertheless, our wedding day was ultimately filled with love and happiness. We felt deeply grateful for the support of our loved ones who came together to celebrate the beginning of our journey as a married couple. In the days following our wedding, Deborah and I basked in the joy of starting this new chapter in our lives, confident that we could face whatever challenges lay ahead together, side by side. As a married couple, Deborah and I have begun to settle into our new life together following our wedding. Each day presents us with the opportunity to cherish the moments we share, and we find joy in the little things that come with being married. From quiet mornings where we enjoy breakfast in bed to cozy evenings spent reading side by side, our connection continues to deepen. We are filled with excitement as we plan for our future and all the possibilities that lie ahead. We are confident that our love will serve as a guiding light, helping us navigate any challenges that may come our way. Since tying the knot, married life has proven to be a delightful experience. Deborah and I have embraced our roles as partners, finding happiness in both the mundane and the special moments we create together. Our bond has grown stronger, and we feel more in tune with each other than ever before. Alongside the joys of married life, we have also acknowledged the responsibilities that come with it, approaching them with a sense of teamwork and understanding. Recently, I embarked on an important journey toward personal growth and healing within my family. Encouraged by the advice of friends and loved ones, I made the decision to start therapy. This choice has proven to be transformative, equipping me with valuable tools to better understand myself and improve my relationships. Through therapy, I have been able to address emotional wounds and challenges, particularly those related to my relationship with Deborah's mother, Maggie. With the guidance of my therapist, I have learned to communicate more openly with Deborah and work towards building a stronger, more honest relationship. When I felt ready, Deborah and I agreed that it was time to reach out to Maggie to mend the rift that had grown between us. While the prospect of reaching out was daunting for me, I recognized the importance of this step. I understood how much Deborah valued her relationship with her mother and didn't want her to miss out on the chance to reconnect with her only remaining parent. We decided to invite Maggie over for dinner, seeing it as an opportunity to have a proper conversation and to mend fences. Maggie had been staying at various relatives' homes since the incident, and when Deborah contacted her with the dinner invitation, it caught her off guard. Although she seemed hesitant at first, there was a spark of intrigue about the chance to reconnect with her daughter. When the evening of the dinner arrived, we started cautiously, engaging in small talk to catch up on each other's lives. Deborah took the lead to break the ice, expressing her heartfelt wish for a healthier relationship between me and Maggie. She shared how much she loved us both and hoped to see a stronger bond develop between us. As the conversation unfolded, Maggie slowly began to open up. She admitted that her actions had stemmed from a deep sense of loss and uncertainty after the passing of her husband. These emotions had clouded her judgment and influenced her behavior. She expressed genuine remorse for how she had treated me, acknowledging the pain it had caused. It was clear that she was truly sorry and recognized the impact of her actions. The conversation flowed from there, touching on the hurt feelings and misunderstandings that had built up over time. We discussed the steps needed for healing and reconciliation. It was an emotional exchange filled with tears and heartfelt apologies, with Deborah playing a vital role as a bridge between us. By the end of our dinner, there was a palpable sense of hope and relief in the room. While the wounds of the past still needed time to heal, we had laid a positive foundation for rebuilding our relationship. Since that evening, our interactions with Maggie during family events have evolved positively. The previous awkwardness has faded, and our relationship is steadily improving. Although I am still not comfortable with the idea of her living with us again, I remain patient and understanding, fully aware that healing is a gradual process. Each step forward reassures us that the bonds of family can be restored, and we are committed to nurturing this journey together.